lady is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host and fantastic representative of the Paranormal Portal. I am Brent Thomas, here to guide you on your journey into the Paranormal Portal. Hope you guys are doing great. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of what we're doing. We are absolutely thrilled to be back, and a special thank you to all the birthday wishes that I got. That was incredible. Thank you all for all the love and support and kindness. And I did take a night off last night, and it was fantastic, really. I mean, of course, I missed you all, but other than that, it was nice to just sit back and just, decompress for a whole night. It was really fun, and had a good time with the minion, and what can I say? It was fun. We made s'mores, and I tortured a few marshmallows along the way, and actually managed to document the demise of one of them, but I love me some s'mores, so it's how I roll. But we got a great show lined up for you guys tonight, so I hope you will have a great time with this. This is kind of a new venture on the Paranormal Portal, as we usually stick with very specific topics. But here's the thing: tonight we're gonna take a little bit of a segue into a different direction. Not that it's not relevant; it's very relevant. But we are welcoming Mr. Carlton Moore to the show, who is better known in our chat room on YouTube as the Farmacy Seeds Network. He is joining us along with our very own Don Longbeard. So let's welcome both of those gentlemen to the show. Hi, guys. Welcome.
How you doing, Am I getting the little window again tonight?
Nah, you get the whole deal, because I had to give you a little window when you had Bear on, because of course he doesn't go on camera, so I had to move you down to a minus size, but you're full size tonight, Don.
Sweet. So I saw what you did to that poor marshmallow, and I wanted to tell you what happened the last time I had s'mores. I was about 20, I was 36 or 37. First time I had ever had a s'more in my life.
36
believe it or not.
Okay.
So 37.
Okay.
And I got so high on marshmallows and chocolate that I dislocated my shoulder on a motorcycle.
All righty then.
Oh, man. Oh.
Only you could make a s'more a controlled substance, Don. Wow, I'm not sure what you put in your s'mores, but I'm sure it was a lot of fun.
I think my drinking buddy at the time did it.
Oh.
He's like, aha, watch this.
Yeah.
I'll get you every time.
Well,
How you doing, Carlton?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We are great. And so we're really excited about tonight's show because, ladies and gentlemen, this is a new avenue for us. What it is Carlton called in a couple of weeks ago, and we got into this great discussion about nutrition. I was like, you know what? There's definitely a correlation to the body in terms of spirituality, spiritual awareness, and function. And I thought, my God, we have right now a resource that's available to us who can help us understand how to take care of our bodies a little better and how to tune the mechanism, if you will. I mean, if you look at every major religion, there is the mind, body, spirit. And most people focus on the mind and the spirit, and they kind of screw the whole body thing up. And I'm guilty of that as well. I mean, I've just been abusing my frame for a number of years, and that's why it's in the fine shape it's in now. But I'm working on it.
A circle is a shape.
A circle is a shape. However, it's not the one I'm shooting for. So with that in mind, we thought, you know what, let's have a dialogue about this, about nutrition, because I think it is important in everything. The body is the focal point, in my opinion, of the spirit. And of course, we radiate our spirit outward into the world. And this is the mechanism we do it in. I do think that nutrition is important to that and how the energy flow happens. It certainly is important to the energy flow in terms of disease and illness. And I think that it's a profound discussion that really needs to happen. And I'm really honored to have you on to discuss this with us. So first of all, thank you for doing this. And this is really exciting.
Well, thank you for having me on, Brent. I'm very honored to be on the show and to be a guest. And I think I told you guys before we started here, I'm really not used to being in the spotlight, so to speak. So, I'm just very honored to be here. And I'm not sure exactly where to start, but that was a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no worries, and we'll go through it together. I mean, I'm certainly not going to go. And here's Carlton, take it away. We're in this for the discussion and the journey. But I think first of all, in your opinion, how do you think that the health of the body is incumbent upon the whole health of the whole being?
I think if you look at it from any perspective, the health of the body is the foundation for all the rest of it. And if you don't have good body health, then how can you support good energetics, good emotions, and good spirituality?
Very true. Very true. And I agree wholeheartedly. Now, I guess probably generally the first place I usually start on interviews, and it's kind of the canned start, but I think it's a good start, is that how did this begin for you?
That's an excellent question. So this all started for me. Well, let me back up a bit. I've been around farms and farming and homesteading and that sort of stuff ever since I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. I always enjoyed that. I always loved all the different aspects of that and the science and the learning of it, the building of it, the hard work, the exercise, the dedication, and the knowledge. But in 2013, I heard a speaker by the name of John Kempf, who heads a company called Advancing Eco-Agriculture. And these guys are the new regenerative agricultural company. And John, the first talk I heard him give was at NOFA, Mass, which is Northeastern Organic Farmers Association of Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And he talked about how he started in farming and how his family and his dad was the pesticide supplier for the entire area that he lived in. So they supplied all the local farmers with pesticides. And he talked about how it changed his life when he started to really look at plants. At one point, they took over a neighboring property, and the neighboring property had not been using pesticides. And so there was this very definitive line between the plants that they were growing with pesticides and chemicals, and like these plants would get a disease and you would see this disease come in and it would start to wipe the plants out, and they'd spray more chemicals trying to stop it. And then the other side where the chemicals weren't, you could see everything thriving. So he really wanted to know what made the difference in inches or feet that changed plant health so dramatically. But he knew that there was something wrong from seeing that. And so after I heard him talk, it really brought my awareness forward in regarding chemicals and nutrition and all that sort of stuff. And so that's what kind of started my journey on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we live in a culture of these frankenfoods, these foods that are almost as much test tube as they are gardening, and I think it's, of course, there's some great strides that have been made in regards to science and in regards to agriculture, but, and I'm not trying to, to disparage that in a large way, but I think that their adoption into our diets and into our lifestyles has been incredibly reckless. And I don't think that all the data was probably there when they started releasing this stuff. I mean, you look at DDT, for God's sakes, it almost single-handedly wiped out the bald eagle and several other things out of our ecosystem because of crop health. And so all of the ramifications of that. Do you agree that there's been a real disregard for proper testing and research?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And then when you look at like the revolving door between some of these agricultural and chemical companies and the FDA, you realize they kind of have a pretty good lobbyist foothold on the FDA, and so then you got to question the authenticity of the tests that are being done.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at that, you have a really broken model to start with right from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was it, and not to name names, but it rhymes with Don Hanto.
Yes, yes.
Which would be Monsanto, Don. I don't know. I just made that up.
That one seems to command a lot of attention in the press. But I don't know if you know or not. Those guys, I think last year, the year before, recently merged with like 5 or 6 other major corporations, including Bayer, Pfizer, and a few others. Syngenta, I think, is another one.
And that's terrifying. And they there's a lot of conspiracy that has happened in the terms of Monsanto, and that's not necessarily the scope of our show. But ladies and gentlemen, there's definitely there's almost this. I don't know. I'm putting ourselves out there for the Paranormal Portal.
Yeah.
But there's almost this mafia mentality when it comes to agriculture, and it's absolutely terrifying. Just off the cuff, what is your feeling about GMOs?
Oh boy, that's a can of worms. Let me just say along what you just said. If you don't believe that there is some sort of an agenda there with those companies, go check out a man named Percy Schmeiser out of Canada and what happened to him and his farm and his family's farm. So that's just a pointer, so we don't have to go deep into that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I just want to make people aware that there is a real agenda at work as far as big agriculture is concerned, and it's terrifying.
Yes, absolutely. And you just asked me a question, and now I forgot it already.
You're about the GMOs.
Oh, my opinion on GMOs, yes. GMOs, I don't like what they're doing with GMOs, and this goes back to the testing comment you made before. They're not being tested long term. We don't know what the long term effects of these things are, but even if you can put that down and say, okay, with good testing and long term testing, maybe we could come to a conclusion that maybe some GMOs might be useful in some form or fashion. I don't believe that, especially now that I have the nutritional knowledge of human, plant, and animal health and how that all goes back to nutrition and biology being correct. But even if you put that down, most of the GMOs are engineered to withstand direct pesticide application, or even worse, to produce their own pesticides.
Oh, yeah.
So,
the neonicotinoids, those are terrifying.
Yeah. Well, those and Bacillus thuringiensis, and there's a woman named Dr. Stephanie Seneff, who's a scientist out of Hawaii, who actually did some research on how Bacillus thuringiensis, the GMO Bacillus thuringiensis plants, or BT plants, actually change the human gut biome. And she's actually got some really interesting information on how that actually has an effect on people with autism. And you can see the autism and cancer rates skyrocketing since this stuff was introduced.
Wow.
So you should check her out as well. If I always encourage people to do their own research.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's a huge, massive stuff to cover.
Right.
But, I try to just put pointers in so you can kind of have a reference, and then you can always go learn on your own and make your own assessment of things. Always, have your own discernment about things.
So let's talk a little bit about organic farming, just in what you see in your produce section of a supermarket. Obviously, those are going to be more healthy than their normal counterparts. But are they the big answer? Is that the big answer to better nutrition? Is to buy the organics?
Okay, so I've read a statistic somewhere. I don't remember where it was from, but they say that about 70% of the organic food on the shelf is still nutritionally deficient. Okay,
Oh.
but that said, the organic stuff, at least in the organic system, you have to have 3 years where you haven't been spraying that soil with chemicals, and so you are at least removing a large portion of the chemical component there, and that's a huge hazard. And we can go into pesticides and that sort of plastics and that sort of stuff and how that affects human biology. But in short, it affects the human endocrine system. And so if your endocrine system is messed up and your hormones are messed up, none of the rest of your body's regulation systems are working correctly.
Mm. So it really is a cascading kind of waterfall of problems.
It is. It is. It's very complex, and we have to remember, it's easy to single out one thing, but biological systems are complex living systems.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists have trouble even studying bacteria. I think it was like 97 or 98%, it might even be 99% of bacteria. They can't study those bacteria on their own. They have to have them with the rest of their bacterial and fungal communities to even see what they do because they can't survive without it.
Oh, wow. That's really wild.
Yeah, and I just learned that from my son a couple of weeks ago. So,
So you decided that you wanted to do this right, and so you personally propagate crops and on your farm.
I do. I do. I have a small operation here. I think total last year I had like 20 or 25,000 square feet. That's about half an acre or so.
Uh-huh.
So it's not a huge operation, but it's pretty diverse. And a big part of that is me learning how to get this stuff correct and do it right before I start to scale up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because oh, go ahead.
I think that's incredible, and I think that's huge. I also hope we can touch on what is that? What is that type of farming where they use hydroponic farming.
Yeah.
That I find interesting as well, but I guess we can get into that in a bit. But ladies and gentlemen, the reason we're starting here is because I think that probably the first part of nutrition is what we're putting into our bodies. I mean, obviously that's nutrition, but I mean health is what we're putting into our bodies and how that affects the whole mechanism as you were discussing. And I think that, a lot of us are trying to make the right choices, but I think even the right choices aren't as clear as simply a label like organic or this or that. Now I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you buy organic, you can still be buying GMOs. That the organic label doesn't mean that you're not getting a GMO, a genetically modified organism. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, but there are some stipulations to that. In general, if you're buying organic, it's pretty safe of GMO. But then the other side of that is, you grow a crop in an environment, and that crop has pollen that it puts out, and that pollen, even if it's GMO pollen, can drift over and actually contaminate some genetic material onto even organic plants. And that's what Percy Smyser ran into. He had been growing canola seed or rapeseed in his family for 50 years, and his crops got contaminated, and then he got sued over it like he had stolen the seed. Very strange world.
Oh, yeah, and successfully sued as well, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
They bankrupted him, basically.
Oh, that is so disgusting. Wow. Yeah, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's a peek into some of the mafia mentalities out there in this fields. But so we'll also get into discussing supplements and more of that, because I was absolutely fascinated the other night when we were discussing it briefly on that phone call. But there's so much information, and there's so much that we need to know. But I'm just really thrilled that we're going to have this discussion and it's on this show, because I think the more that we can do, the more impact it can have. I don't know. I'm just having a moment here. Sorry, but
I completely agree, Brent. And I started in 2013. I started my own forum, trying to educate more people about it, and I got some interest in it, but it wasn't quite spreading like I was hoping it would.
Yeah.
And so I think any opportunity to educate people and help them, kind of seek that better health and better nutrition is a great opportunity. And I kind of feel obligated to do that because so many people don't don't understand, and they have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of pieces to it. So it's a really complex puzzle.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Don?
It's interesting because I know the story. I know the story about the farmer and the drifting pollen, and I watched. I saw some of that on the news. A few years ago actually. Um, you know, and I think it's just absolutely insane what they're doing to people. They're bankrupting these people. They're taking their farms. But I also read recently that there was recently a suit from a farmer against this place, the
Hmm.
mafia, the egg mafia,
Yeah.
and the farmer actually won the suit.
Oh, good. That's encouraging.
That's
Is
awesome.
Yeah,
I
so I'll have to look that up, but I'm not quite, I can't quote it. So
Sure.
Okay, so I can talk to that a little bit. I'm not specifically aware of that farmer winning the suit, but I know, yeah, I think it was in California. There was a guy who sued them over glyphosate and getting cancer, and he actually won that lawsuit. And my understanding that it like almost a year ago was there were like 9 or 11,000 more lawsuits in queue for the same thing. So they finally got case law on it. So now we'll see what happens and how that affects this whole thing.
Oh, that's right. That guy was a greenskeeper or something, wasn't he?
Yes, yes. He
Yes.
worked at a park or
Yep.
a school or something like that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and glyphosate's a whole nother thing. And basically, ladies and gentlemen, that's Roundup. But the
Yeah.
applications that we're referencing here were used commercially, so they're probably even more potent than the consumer version. But that stuff doesn't go away. That stuff like
No.
stays. I mean, they found glyphosate in the breast milk of lactating mothers, and that to me
Yeah.
is, oh my
If I could
god.
just talk about glyphosate for just a minute, I could just throw a
Sure,
few things down.
please.
So glyphosate works by locking up specific trace minerals. That's how it actually kills plants and acts as an herbicide. So glyphosate has a very high affinity for manganese, zinc, magnesium, potassium, and a bunch of other minerals. I don't know the full range, but the way that it works on killing plants is primarily locking up manganese and wiping out an enzyme pathway. And when it does that, the plant's health collapses and it can't survive. So knowing that, and the other thing I wanted to say about that was they have found glyphosate even in rainwater samples in very remote places. So it is ubiquitous in the environment already.
Oh God, that's horrible. And will that if it, let's say, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but let's say tomorrow they said no more, that's it, cut off, can't be used, it's illegal. How long would it take for that to get out of our environment?
Wow, that's a good question. What I can tell you is it has a half-life of about 22 years. And for
Oh,
those who don't understand a half-life, that means that if you put an ounce of glyphosate out on an acre this year, in 22 years, there'll still be half an ounce of glyphosate out there. 22 years later, there'll still be a quarter ounce out there. 22 years later, there'll still be an eighth ounce out there. And so you're looking at about 100 years after you treat a property with that to wipe it out.
wow. And it does show up, and it does impact. I mean, even I there was a neighbor that lived right next to me just a few years ago. He passed away from cancer, oddly enough, but he said he will never use that stuff ever because one time it was used on a section of his yard, and he said he used to dig for earthworms, and he said after that was used, he couldn't find earthworms in that section of his yard for like 3 years until finally
Yeah,
the first ones started showing up, and that's
yeah,
terrifying. My God. So anyway,
yeah.
it's not necessarily the scope of the show, but I think that when we're speaking of health, that certainly is important because we're talking about chemicals and substances that may lie stored in our bodies and have to be cleansed and purged from us in order for us to find our better health.
Yes, yes, and that's more my point. I'm not here to assassinate any companies or
Sure.
anything like that.
Right.
And also let's keep in mind that a lot of these big farms, like 70 some percent of our food supply comes from, I think it's like 1,000 big farms in this country. So like
Hmm.
the majority of our food is coming from these huge farms right now, and that is part of the problem. But it's not necessarily the farmer's fault. They've been miseducated and they're under a lot of pressure. If you
Right.
don't produce on your farm and you don't get paid, you go under, and
Yeah.
then your family's not going to be able to eat. So
Yeah.
there are some very real consequences with that, and that's part of why some of the bigger farmers are very resistant, because they don't have any other great alternatives, and they don't understand how to do things with regenerative agriculture yet. I see a lot of people like want to blame the farmers. You can't really just blame the farmers. What you want to do is educate the farmers in your area so they know better and they can learn better practices, and build better communities that way through education rather than assaulting each other.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think you're right. The farmers are people that are trying to make a living. They're trying to and probably got a pretty good deal to work with these larger companies, and so who can blame them? And
Yep.
it's certainly hard to hold them responsible for the shenanigans of the others. But I think that the awareness is important, that we know what kind of things are in the foods that we're eating, because therefore, as we're talking about nutrition and better health, that certainly becomes a factor. And I hope you'll have some recommendations for how to clean those things out of our systems as we move towards that better health. That's going to be an important part.
Certainly. And, as far as the glyphosate, you kind of just have to assume that you're consuming a certain amount of that, regardless of what your food practices are. Because let's also remember, to get organic certification, you only have to stop spraying chemicals for 3 years. And most of these chemicals are, like glyphosate and others, they have a very long half-life and they persist in the environment for a very long time. And they're endocrine disruptors as well. So once you take them into your body, now you're messing up your endocrine system. And then that's going to help dysregulate you even more.
Yeah.
So as far as glyphosate, two major things that it very specifically locks up are manganese and zinc. So you could be supplementing with manganese and zinc to help offset that. So that,
okay.
it can only lock up so much of it, and then some actually your body gets, rather than having it locked up and not available in your system.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that tonight, because I found what you were talking about manganese being necessary to be, to help distribute these things throughout our body. And most people don't know this kind of stuff, including me. So, I'm really excited for that. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our first break of the night. As you can see, it's going to be an incredible discussion, lots of information coming out, and hopefully it'll help move us all into a better state of health and therefore a better state of spirituality. Excuse me. I just got some dinner coming back at me. But remember, after the show tonight, to stick around for Paisley Wild. The Spaces Between will be coming up next, following the Paranormal Portal on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. So you can check that out. It's a great show. Our wonderful friend Paisley Wild runs that. And actually, our very own Don Longbeard is producer of the show over there. So lots to wait for, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Don't go away for more of the Paranormal Portal. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back at it here. Half hour number 2 is upon us. We are in the launch position to take you on another half hour journey until the hour break. But we've started off with a great plethora of things and discussion fodder. And part of that is my fault because I have to tell you that, I try not to get real upset about things in this world because there's so much going on and there's so much probably to be angry about. One of the things I really take huge personal offense to and really fires me up is the abuse of the world and the people in it that happens in big business. And in turn, I'm talking about big ag. I think that they've really pulled some shenanigans, and I think that a lot of people's health and well-being has suffered as a result of it. So it's one of those discussions that's getting me hot, and I try not to get overly invested emotionally, but companies like that just piss me off. I'm just sorry. They do. They just piss me off. And it's hard for me to dial it back. So I'm sorry. But I think it's important to know, though, because your health and well-being is important. And as we're on this journey together trying to understand, all things spiritual and paranormal and stuff, certainly we need good health. So that's why we're doing this tonight. And our guest tonight is Mr. Carlton Moore, who is better known in the chat as the Farmacy Seeds Network. He's joining us to help bring us better education about how to be healthy. So welcome back, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I like how this discussion started out.
Oh, do you?
And,
Okay.
Yeah. And I also I share that sentiment. That is part of what fired me up on this journey was just anger.
Yeah.
And then I've kind of learned to transform that to instead of being angry, go out and do something positive and build a better world rather than be angry and fight something. You're better off to go build new.
Yeah. You're right. And it's important to turn that anger into determination, maybe into education, into action.
Yes.
Turn it into action. So good point, and that's well taken. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Don, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. He mentioned, the rise of autism, and I firmly believe I know a lot of people on the autistic scale or the autistic
spectrum there.
Yeah, that word. And and I've always told people all of my life, ever since I started hearing about all this kind of stuff, is I bet you that's what's wrong. That's what's been turning us. There are some people believe that it's autism is a closer connection to a god or a divine spirit, and I like to think that way because it gives it a positive spin. But I bet you a lot of our health issues and things like that are based around these issues of this food that we're taking in because it's so simple to get it. There's the whole idea. There was a meme going around Facebook for a while there. It was a farmer out there and he was in his big combine and it says, don't let the farmers go under or something like that. And then in the bottom, it's got, how they do it. The first comment's like, well, why don't you just go to the store and buy your vegetables there instead of from a farm? And it's like, what
and who's going to grow that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hunting should be illegal and killing cows and killing, animals for food should be illegal. You can just go to the store and buy it. It's all the same idea. We are so disconnected from our food and where our food comes from. I knew a girl who thought milk came in a box.
Wow.
And you had to add water.
Yep.
She
Yep.
really did. And so my point is we're so disconnected, and that gives us that pushes us to go buy to go to the store and just buy what's on the shelf, and not even think about where that food came from, what was used to grow that food, what could it be doing to us. It's got to be. Carlton mentioned the alteration of the gut biome. And, what kind of candida is going wild in there right now? There's good candida and bad candida. But if the bad candida takes over, you've got all kinds of issues. So it's been a great way to start. Thanks, Carlton.
Gladly. I'm glad we're all resonating on the same thing here. If I could, Brian, I'd like to just go down a list of things that I was thinking about. I just kind of made a list of stuff that ties into this, and then you can guide us forward with whatever direction you want to go. But I just wanted to pause and hit this quick.
Yeah.
So like topics that this scope covers, but is not necessarily all inclusive: nutrition and exercise, biology, enzymes, vitamins, energetics, emotional, environmental, toxin hazards, including but not limited to pesticides, water, plastics, antibiotics, and other food hazards in the food chain. CPI, which is critical points of influence, we can go into that briefly tonight. Frequency, resonance, and then energetic hazards like Wi-Fi, cell phone, that sort of stuff, as well as light health. And, we have a lot of artificial light in our environment. That is a very unnatural thing that's really evolved only really in the past 100 years or less. So those are just some things that kind of tie the mind map of the general idea together.
Yeah, you've got about 5 or 10 shows right there, dude. I mean, literally, those are some amazing topics. But since we've kind of started out on the food and drink stuff, why don't we start there and continue this? Since we've already been, the first half hour is kind of dedicated to agriculture and the growth. Let's discuss that. So, what do people need to know about the foods they're eating?
All right. Well, I guess I should mention at this point there is part of that NOFA Mass organization that I mentioned is they're sort of the Northeastern Organic Farmers Association, and they're all about educating people, and especially farmers and gardeners and growers, about using trace mineral nutrition and good biology to build plant health and immunity, and that immunity and plant health gets transferred to us when we eat those plants. I don't know if you know it or not, about 30% of our RNA, which is like the replication side of our DNA, actually interacts directly with the food that we eat.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Right. So that's how actually important that really is. So those guys actually there's another organization called the Bionutrient Food Organization, and they have a website, I think it's bionutrient.org, and you should go check that out, because what they're trying to do is develop a program that makes it so the average consumer can actually test the quality of the food on the grocery store shelf, and so they can actually find out what the Brix rating of it is, and they eventually want to develop a spectrometer that you can carry with you, so you can look at what the actual trace mineral nutrition content of the food is on the shelf, and then you're not in labeling anymore, you're looking at actual scientific data yourself.
Wow. Well, don't you think that people would be, I mean, if they knew how nutritionally deficient and minerally deficient our food is, they would be absolutely floored?
They would be floored and upset, and they'd probably pick up some of the same gusto I have in trying to educate people and learn more about it.
Yeah, I think so, because what is it with processed foods too? Can you talk to us a little bit about processed foods and the reason that those can be detrimental?
I can. That also ties into biology. A big part of this equation goes back to gut biology, and so processed foods are basically they're refined really well. They're ground down, like if they're grains, they're ground really fine, and they're often mixed with other constituents, anti-caking agents, emulsifiers, all sorts of stuff like that. If you know anything about emulsifiers, they kind of act like a detergent. Anti-caking agents are stuff like titanium dioxide. Like, would you eat titanium dioxide if you had a brick of it sitting in front of you? Probably not, right?
Yeah, not me.
So there's that, and then on top of that, many of these processing plants, at some point in that chain, they're exposed to other chemicals in the factory environment, and then on top of that, they're exposed to plastics. And if you don't know about plastics, plastics are very high in estrogen mimicking compounds. So again, we're back at the hormone disruption again in the endocrine system.
Wow. Wow.
Somebody told me that was a myth the other night.
Oh, really?
Somebody also told me soy is absolutely safe for you. There's no reason for men not to eat it.
Oh, let me go into soy for a minute.
Sure.
Okay, soy is actually a natural estrogen producer. Okay, so but if you can get up and beyond and around that, most of the soy, unless you're buying organic soy, the soy is GMO. And I don't know if you know it or not, but those fields, they keep the weeds out of those fields by spraying glyphosate directly on those soy crops. And let's just stop for a second and understand that when you have a chemical in the environment, for each level you go up in the food chain, and that goes right down to the plants. A plant at low maturity doesn't have the concentration that the seeds or fruit from that plant have. Then another animal eats that. It gets further concentrated. So if you're using glyphosate in a field and then you're grazing those cows in the field, now you're concentrating that further, and then you're having a steak from that. So you're having concentrated toxins along with your steak.
Just like Mom used to make.
I love that voice you do, but that's a great,
Well, thank you.
great Homer Simpson.
I appreciate that. But then you look at the wheat, of course, and I know that wheat, and this is kind of a new development in the last, I don't know, decade or 20 years, that generally they'd wait for the wheat to mature and get ready for harvest, but now they're rolling through these green plants with glyphosate, and they're spraying them so that they all die uniformly, so they can speed their harvest times. And
Yep,
so
they're using it as a desiccant. Yep.
yeah, so they're every piece of bread you're eating, with the exception of organic bread, I guess, would be including glyphosate in the recipe.
Yeah, and not just in a recipe, but it's being sprayed on right at the end of the growing season, right before harvest.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know how you can get that approved legal. Like it just seems like insane to me.
Right. So how about and I realize I'm spiderwebbing around, but artificial sweeteners.
Oh yeah, those aren't good. They're chemicals that are designed to trick your tongue into thinking that they're sweet, but they're not. There is one that's available that's actually from a plant, and even that is still up for debate. Stevia, and if you've ever tried a stevia leaf, it's actually super sweet like sugar, but it doesn't have sugar in it. But basically, those artificial sweeteners are tricking your tongue through chemistry effectively.
And things like aspartame specifically are. Can you talk about the problems with aspartame?
I can touch on it a little bit. I've done a lot of research in so many areas. I don't have a super tight memory on all of it, but
Sure.
it is a neurotoxin, and back when I used to work for a surveyor, and I don't have the best teeth, and I drink a lot of coffee, and when I worked for the surveyor, I was getting coffee at gas stations all the time, and I would put aspartame in it, trying to keep the sugar out, but I would and I put a lot in because I like my coffee sweet, but I would lay awake at night after a long, hard work day with my mind just going crazy, and when I found out that it's a neurotoxin, it's a neuroexciter, I was like, oh, well, maybe that's part of my problem,
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Hey Don, can you take over for just a minute? I got to go out. We got a thunderstorm blowing up here, and I got stuff outside. So can you just take over, you and Carlton? I'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. These two gentlemen will be carrying the weight for the next few minutes.
All right, do your thing.
So, hey, buddy. MCAT just asked a good question about the glyphosates, and he says, would accelerating the growth season have anything to do with grain exports? Do you think that's connected to why they're doing it like they are?
Yeah, well, there's this that goes into a whole deep thing actually. Even the seeds that are being produced, they're harvesting the seeds a little bit early, and so the gene expression isn't complete on the seed. And part of the reason they're doing that is to pack more seeds on a pallet.
Right.
But you're not letting the plant go to full development, and so now you don't have the full genetic expression there. And actually, I did a comparison a couple of years ago with an organic blue flower corn, and I did the foliar feeds and trace mineral nutrition on it to boost it up. And the comparison just between organic and inorganic in yield was astounding. I think it was like my memory's kind of faded on, but I think it was like 14 or 15 pounds of yield from 100 plants on the organic with the foliar feeds, and the inorganic seed was like 9 pounds or something like that. It was almost double just from the practice of the previous growing season, and that kind of opens a point here on epigenetics. And I don't know if you are familiar with epigenetics.
Hmm. Well, I have a vague, overview on it, and very vague. But please go ahead.
Okay. So everybody kind of has an understanding of genetics, right? And people say, "Oh, genetics is everything," and there's this argument back and forth about it. But what's not being talked about, at least not, uh, on a wider scale, is epigenetics. And so scientists did a study. They mapped the entire human genome, thinking that they were going to cure cancer and fix all these problems and have everything worked out. And what they found is that even having the entire genome map, the problem is any gene you express in an environment, and that environment tremendously affects how that gene expresses itself, how the DNA is replicated, and how each of those protein compounds and all that sort of stuff is built. So, it really comes back to, environment is a big part of it, and that's also so much a part of why nutrition is so important, and getting plant health up so that we can get good nutritional health into humans and animals.
So it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier about being able to examine the bacteria in its native environments. It's kind of the same idea to investigate what the issue is in the original organism.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll even give you an example of how that works backward also. Um, so plant health really comes back to soil health and good soil balance. And you can build disease suppressive soils or disease enhancing soils. Those are kind of the two directions you can go. So one of the experiments that was done, I know John Kemp was talking about this, and I don't have specific examples to cite, but if he was talking about it, I'm sure I'm sure it's real. He was talking about how GMO they did some tests with GMO soil, and they studied the soil biome with growing GMO plants in it, and it actually changed the biome of the soil, and had a negative effect on the soil, so that when they grew non-GMO crops in there, they got less yield and less productivity out of that soil, just because of the way that interaction happens between the plants and the soil.
Well, so they've also talked about these companies. They produce seed that already has these weed killing abilities that they can just do it themselves. It's like, I'm not quite sure. This is why I'm asking, but it seems like these crops that they grow have the ability to suck up manganese and selenium and all of these things you mentioned earlier. So no other plants can have them. Does that make any sense?
That kind of makes sense. I'm not super familiar with that part of it. I mean, I try to keep an eye on the GMO stuff to have a general knowledge of it, but I also like that's not really my focus because I don't think that's the direction to go.
Okay. Sure. Now, beings as I used to work in preparedness food. I used to work for a company that sold preparedness food, dehydrated food, reconstitutable with hot water, that kind of thing. And the big thing was what we called, basically a seed can. And in this seed can, it would have different packets of different kinds of vegetables, and each can was worth about, I think it was like a half an acre of food, and different things. But they always pushed that it was organic. And now you touched on it just a second ago, but I wanted to get a little more clarification, um, specifically regarding the idea behind GMOs and organics. And as Brent asked just a bit ago, GMOs and organics are two separate things. However, they're not exclusive. Is that correct? Is that what you were saying?
I believe that's correct, and my understanding is any like produce on the shelf labeled organic is not allowed to have any GMO in it. But I don't know, I don't know on the bigger supply chains, the processed foods and that kind of stuff. I really don't know the real specifics of that. It's not necessarily my area or my forte of study.
Well, that's okay. That's absolutely okay because I mean, I've just got and I'm sure a lot of people have very similar questions regarding this kind of thing. Um, and so well, you know what? Let's go this way. Also, another thing is heritage style vegetables as opposed to GMO. Now, that's probably where we should be going with that. Is what's the difference between a GMO and a heritage, or some other propagatable? Because we know that basically, if you get a vegetable out of almost any store anymore, those seeds are non-viable. However, heritage is so it can be propagated.
Yes, and the heritage strains are, they're strains that have been around for a long time, and yeah, that's a confusion that I really want to clear up. I hear this clouded all the time, and it's like my pet peeve when it comes to GMO related stuff. Is people say, oh well, all of our food is genetically modified. No, not correct. Genetically modified organisms are organisms that actually have their genes edited. Okay. And there's a huge difference between editing genes and natural selection. Natural selection is how a lot of this stuff has been bred. And for example, the common carrot comes originally from Queen Anne's lace, which was a wild plant, and it grows this big, beautiful white flower with a little red dot in the middle of it, where supposedly the queen pricked her finger, and that's her blood from the prick of her finger. And I'll bet Paisley could go into more of that too on the more spiritual side of that stuff.
That's really cool. I'm back. My outside should be good now.
Should I go check my outside to make sure, because it's probably rolling my way now?
It looks like it's actually going to be moving your direction, so you might want to.
I'll be back. I gotta go check my windows and stuff. Hold on, I'll be back.
All right, very good.
Keep them dry, Don.
So now we've kind of put on the table some of the things to look for. Well, I guess we've put out enough cautionary flags of the things that are out there. So what should people look for as we're going to the grocery store? Because granted, most people don't believe or don't have the time to propagate their own garden and to create their own produce. So what do they look for when they go to the store to purchase and to hopefully do it from an informed place?
Well, I would say, first of all, try to find out from the store where they get their food from.
Okay.
And it's going to take some work because you have to do the research and find out what the source is. You always got to go back and look at the source. As a general rule, start with organic. Like, that's the best thing you can do is just get the pesticides and toxins load down for starters.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, it becomes kind of a field of study. You kind of got to know, to be able to read your labels and know what's what. What's that MSG that they put in everything?
Oh, monosodium
right?
glutamate. Yeah.
Monosodium glutamate. And so because people have become aware of monosodium glutamate's a hazard, now they're starting to use other terms for it, like other natural flavors and stuff like that.
Oh.
So you kind of have to play this update game where you stay up on how the labeling works and understand what you're reading on the label and what it is.
Sure.
If you see something that you wouldn't just go out and eat, then you probably shouldn't be eating something with that in it.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably a good rule of thumb. If you wouldn't put it on a spoon and take a bite, you probably don't want to be eating it. But in the labeling game, I think that's incredibly difficult, though, because we're looking at polysyllabic scientific words that most people, don't understand, myself included, most of them. I mean, I can't pronounce, 3/4 of what's in most foods. But
that's another good rule. If you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't eat it.
Yeah. Well, very good, very good. So if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, folks. which may or may not be the truth for food from abroad. There might be things you can't produce or pronounce that are okay to eat. But so let's talk about. We've talked about how to mitigate what's going into your body. What do we do about the stuff that's in there already? You know what? Let's hold off on that though, because we're about a minute, just a minute and a half out from the break. But I think when we come back, let's talk about how do we mitigate the damage already done? What do we do to help get rid of this stuff from our systems? How do we move towards better health? Because I think that a lot of people really have good intentions. We all, I mean, look at New Year's resolutions, and we're still in that period where some people are still sticking to them. So we're still in that grace period. So I think we can try to help them out now and try to give them some tips to how to move some of this garbage out, because we've got lifetimes of this crap in us. I think all of us that are tuning in have been at this for a long time, and we've probably got lots of buildups in our body. So how can we get rid of those? What kind of things can we do in terms of supplements, in terms of dietary shifts, or is there some kind of program that can help to mitigate some of this and push it out? I know. Discuss with us what chelation is all about, because I think that sounds really promising, but I don't pretend to know too much. But we'll get into that on the other side of the break. Does that sound good, Carlton?
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, let's give people some actionable information.
Absolutely. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our hour break here in just about 20 seconds. But again, for those of you that are tuning into the podcast and noticing there hasn't been podcast, stay tuned. We took a break. We'd been at it for a year, 3 episodes a week for a year. And so Don and I decided
157 episodes.
157 podcasts are out there. We're going to start them again real soon. So don't give up hope. We're still at it. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our hour break. Stay tuned for more of the Paranormal Portal with Carlton Moore when we return. We'll be right back.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger boils inside me, and their lies keep falling apart. With my silence, I am not a stupid boy. No more breaking me with kindness, just you dance upon my joy. Leading me with empty promise, you're just another fucking mess. ready. Just make sure that you're well fed.
Caroline is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Well, now she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeist are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Hour number 2 is upon us. It has begun, ladies and gentlemen. It has begun. Thank you. All right, we are back at it here on the Paranormal Portal, and I'm your host, Brent Thomas, still. And, of course, Don is with me here. That's Don, waving frantically.
Hi.
Or-
Hi.
Looking like a kitten on the window there. Sorry. That cracks me up. Sorry about that, but I enjoyed your lip syncing there, Don. That was beautiful. It's kind of like watching my minion sing along the songs and how he goes like, it's like he's not quite sure what the words are, but he's still rolling with it. I love you, brother. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm not sure what you're holding up, but I'm scared.
That's a stick of selenite right there.
Okay. All right. Keep your selenite to yourself. But our guest tonight is Mr. Carlton Moore.
Selenite distancing. That's selenite distancing.
That's right. And we are talking about better health and spirit as it relates to spirituality, and it all relates to spirituality. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I think we all can agree that the body is an integral part of our spiritual existence, and it all relates. The spirit is manifest within these forms in this world. If the body has a breakdown, it affects our ability to manifest spiritually, I think, and it affects everything about us. It affects concentration. It affects our ability to mobilize and move throughout our world, and it affects our ability to function. It's so many things. People get tired because of poor nutrition. They don't have energy. It affects everything. So there's not, it's not like we're just going to suddenly start talking about the spirit. This is about the body as it relates to the spirit and our existence here on this world and our journeys in this world. It's everything we do is incumbent upon the health and ability of our bodies. It propagates in our concentration, our ability to learn, our ability to function and participate. So I firmly believe that health is incredibly important. And it's important in not only in just you living your life, but in you becoming who you're going to be. So That's kind of my 2 cents on it. But before the break, Carlton, we were talking about a lot of things, the warning things to look out for, try to steer clear of, get information, telling people how to find information to a degree, but just basically talking about all the warning flags, the red flags out there in terms of our health. So the where I'd like to go now is we've lived a lifetime in these systems as they are now. We're trying to turn the corner to better health. We're trying to correct some of this garbage that's been either done to us to our knowledge or without our knowledge. I mean, I don't think anybody going through a drive-through thinks that they're doing their body real good, but yeah, we still go through drive-throughs. And so we're going to have portions of our lives that are just experiencing horrible nutrition, and there's not much getting around it because you can't always, I don't think anyway, I think you just can't always eat everything that's wonderful for you. But what do you do? So what do you do with all this stuff that's built into our bodies? How do we help mitigate that and get rid of it and move towards better health?
All right. So first thing I guess I want to address here is water quality. Water quality is super, super important, and you have to remember 70 to 90% of our bodies are comprised of water, and that is really sort of our onboard solvent that flows through our blood and our lymph node systems and all of our cells. And if that water is of bad quality, then it is unable to flush out toxins. So that's the number one thing. Drink lots of high-quality water. And when I say high-quality water, ideally spring water, preferably not in plastic bottles. I know this is a really hard thing for people to change, and I know plastic bottles are really convenient, but glass is really the way to carry things. And I should just mention that there's a website called findaspring.com, and it was started by a man named Daniel Vitalis. And if you haven't checked out his podcast, oh, what an awesome podcast! Wild foraging, nutritional health, and energetic health, and good exercise, and all that sort of stuff. But the simple answer for that, the simple point that I'm trying to get to is that findaspring.com is a great way to look and see if there's a spring nearby you, and then you could go and get your own spring water regularly, and that would definitely help with the flushing. If you can't do spring water, tap water is good if it's from a well. Typically, I would still have it tested and be sure. City water, most of it is treated with chlorine and fluorine. Very, very, very bad. If you're using chlorine in your bathroom to kill germs, imagine what that's doing to your body when you consume it.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question. Is it possible? So doesn't chlorine eventually dissipate from the water if it's left out? Will it not dissipate from the water and evaporate into the air?
It will, and fluorine will also. But here's the catch: water is way more complex than we're like conventionally aware of.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned when we talked last time about a documentary by Dr. Masaru Emoto, who studied the memory of water and energetics as it relates to water. I highly recommend checking that out. I think it's about an hour and 20-minute long documentary, but it's a really interesting study. And what they find is that water, no matter what it's exposed to, retains an energetic memory of what it's exposed to. And that goes right down to emotion, and it goes down to a very deep spiritual level in a way, really.
Okay.
And so when you think about it, you think about the concept of like holy water, what that water's been exposed to, and what makes it holy water,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess at this point I should talk a little bit about how I don't want to get too deep into this topic because there's so much other stuff to cover, but I'll put it this way. Intention is a huge part of the energetic signal that you're producing. And so whether you're putting that on water or the people or the animals or plants around you or the environment around you, that intention and that emotional place in your head or in your heart really has a tremendous effect on everything around you.
Very good point. I'd always grown up hearing energy follows intention, and that kind of made me mindful of how I project, myself and my life, because we're emotional beings, and it's really easy to just not rein that in, and I think that's we certainly do a lot with our intentions without even knowing it, both to ourselves and to those around us. But yeah, I always found that really fascinating. The studies that were done that talked about the crystallization of water was one of the experiments, and how that water was treated as it was crystallized, and the dynamic differences in the formations of crystal based upon love, anger, hate, all of these different emotions that were cast onto the water as it was freezing. And it's observable, ladies and gentlemen. It is absolutely observable that the water performed as you would expect with those emotional charges being delivered to it. It was absolutely mind-boggling what kind of effect that had on the water.
For sure, for sure. And I don't know if you're open to it or not, but maybe some night we could even just do something on water specifically, because
Really?
that
Yeah.
itself is such a deep topic. No pun intended.
I see what you did there. No, I think that would be great. I of course, I'm really thankful because I live in a community. I don't really use tap water for a lot other than like boiling stuff or making coffee. But other than that, I drink spring water, although it's in a plastic bottle. So, that's not the greatest, but at least I'm heading in the right direction. I used to live, eat and breathe Coca-Cola. So this is a huge thing for me in the last year. And it's made a big difference. It sure has. But the community I live in does not fluoridate the water. Although I'm pretty sure they do use the chlorine. So if you have to use tap water, what kind of time span do you think it would take to dissipate most of those impurities or those chemicals before consuming?
Okay. I think it's 24 hours is the
24 hours.
typical recommendation. And in order to do that, you don't want it in a bottle with a narrow top. You want a bottle with an open top, so you have lots of surface area for that chlorine to gas off from.
Okay.
The other thing I would recommend if you're doing that is get one of those, a good carbon charcoal filter to run your water through. And I would probably gas off the chlorine first and then do the filtration.
Okay.
And that in itself can make a huge difference.
And then, according to what you're saying, then if you ask blessings over the water after doing all of this, you could be then infusing it with the positive charge for your body. Now, I'm not telling people that you have to be spiritual. Take it for what it means. You can be a Christian prayer, it can be a Muslim prayer, it can be a Buddhist prayer, it can be some mantra from India. It's whatever. It doesn't matter what. It can be something you just make up. To whatever it is you believe, or even your higher self, your higher power, whatever. But I think it's important to project that positive energy into it then, because as you were describing, and we'll certainly dedicate a show to that, because I'd love to hear everything that entails. I have a passing knowledge of what you're talking about, but very, very narrow. And I'm fascinated by the idea that, our energetic states are directly impacting everything around us, including what we're consuming. So, but so if you did filter it down, if you did, gas it off, filtered it down, and, said positive, energetic things over it, that could really recreate or reestablish the health of that, almost to the point of being spring water, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take it quite almost to the point of spring water, but
Okay.
definitely that's as high a quality as you can make given your environment and the situation. You're always trying to adapt to the environment around you. And like some of us are really lucky, like I'm really fortunate. We have a spring on the property here.
Oh,
And I
nice.
have a ram pump that delivers it to a valve that I can walk 20 feet out my door and get fresh spring water anytime I want. And
That's pretty
so
nice.
that's awesome to have.
Until-
But most people aren't that fortunate,
Until Nestle finds you.
Until what, Nessie finds me? Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
How's that go? With the eyes?
Just start looking around.
So, real quick, people were talking, and somebody was talking. I think it was Overbuild Automotive mentioned, the filtration system, gravity-fed filtration system that removes fluoride and things like this. Now, if I remember correctly, there's really only a couple things that can actually take fluoride out of your water, and one of those is aluminum, and another one is charred coconut or char wood, but those don't last as long as, say, the aluminum. Does that ring true? Do you know?
When I get to something I don't know, I'm just going to say I don't know,
Sure.
because I don't want to lead people down a wrong pathway or anything. But what I will say is fluoride is super, super reactive, and so if you're taking it into your body, that's not a good thing.
Right.
The other thing I would caution is, aluminum is also not good in the body in concentrations, and especially if you have cavities that you've had filled with mercury amalgam fillings. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. But
Yeah.
if you go and look on like YouTube, look at what mercury and aluminum do when you put the two together, and you'll understand why you should not be putting anything aluminum in your body.
Yeah, I still got some of those old fillings.
I do too.
It
I
might
do too.
actually
I wish I
explain
could afford to
something.
get it removed.
I know it might explain a lot, actually. But
Yeah.
I will. What was I going to say about that? Because I thought when it comes to doesn't aluminum actually pass the blood-brain barrier and get stored in our heads in our
Yes.
brains? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it does, and there's some research that shows some correlation between that and Alzheimer's,
Yes.
Parkinson's, all that sort of stuff.
Yes, and ladies, if any of you out there, or men, if you're wearing makeup, please be careful about the makeup you're using, as they use aluminum salts a lot in those cosmetics, including deodorants or no antiperspirants. Use
Yes.
a lot of aluminum salts, so get away from that if you can, because that is being stored in your head, and
Yep.
not in a good way.
And that brings up another excellent point. A lot of the soaps and conditioners and a lot of these things people use for washing, this ties into water also. A lot of those have toxic chemicals in them. Make sure you get a really clean, pure soap. You don't want all kinds of additives in it. And then furthermore, when you take a shower, you can absorb up to a quart of that water when you're taking a shower. So if you're taking a shower, you're putting toxic soap on your skin, and then you're taking a hot shower where it's opening your pores up, you're soaking all those chemicals right in. So you could be eating all the healthy food in the world and take 2 bad showers a day, and you're not doing yourself any good on the average, on the whole.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, because then you're drawing it directly in. Wow. Yeah, I had never considered that. I didn't. I guess I didn't know that those things were. Well, of course, I know that shampoos are kind of a soup of stuff. They're basically detergents. I learned that, I think, from Dr. Squatch soap. I think those commercials talked about how most shampoos are labeled as detergents with the FDA or something like that. So that's scary, but
Yeah.
there are healthy alternatives. But I think what can be a deterrent is kind of something that you and I both just touched on a moment ago when we were talking about the amalgam fillings. Is that unfortunately there's a monetary barrier to some of this. So what I would recommend, if you can't afford to buy it, look into making it. Some of this stuff is like stupid easy to make, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, it's not just me. I was looking into handcrafted soaps at one point. I thought it'd be kind of cool to try to make some, and actually, the ingredients list is not too complex at all.
No,
we,
no,
we
it's not.
make soap over here, so I mean, we make soap all the time. It's easy, easy, easy.
Well, there you go. And Don, why don't I have any of that? I'm just curious.
Well, I'm trying to convince certain people to stop making it in the shape of an egg. It drives me nuts. Can't hold on to it when it gets wet.
Don, what do you want it shaped like a dagger?
No, just a jug handle.
I can hold on to those.
Yeah, Don can hang onto a jug like nobody's business. Sorry. Oh my God, this is the portal. After all, you never know what you're getting. But I think that's kind of a dying art. Those home crafted things like shampoos and soaps. But you can still find them at farmers market. But there again, even then, you're still paying pretty steep prices.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and that's along the lines of nutrition and how to clean your body out. One of the best things you can do is eat the most nutritious, healthy food you can get. And I know a lot of people don't have access directly to talk to a farmer, but if there's somebody farming in your area, go check them out. Go see what their practices are. See what they're doing. See if they're using pesticides or not. If they're not using pesticides, that's at least a good start. And you know what? The more of those type of people you support, the more that community will grow. The more that community grows, the better education they're going to get toward that, and the better they're going to be able to serve your health. this whole thing goes back to good community. And that brings up an interesting point about farming in general. Um, John Kempf just did a talk on spirituality as it relates to farming, and I recommend people go check that out. It was a webinar done on the Advancing Eco Agriculture YouTube channel, and I've just shared a link there in the chat so people can check that out later. But he talks about all those pieces and how community works with that, and how as you start to get better nutrition, you start to get your farm corrected. And I can attest to this myself. As things improve, it really improves your total happiness and health and mentality. And the more happy and healthy you are, the more you can start to seek better goals and things. And so that's how this really kind of ties back into spirituality. It's all so complex and intertied.
Yeah. Well, and again, I just as we were talking about in the first segment, it's like we all want to be spiritual. We all want to be spiritually aware, but so many people just neglect that whole body part of that mechanism. I mean, we are focused through a body. We are these spiritual, energetic beings focused into this reality through this mechanism. And if this mechanism is not working well, it's your whole everything you do is going to be affected by that. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So we got about 5 minutes before the next break, but I'd like to get into things like cleaning out. You said water was a great one, and that's well taken. I appreciate that. Now, what about chelation?
All right. So chelation is not a topic I'm super deeply versed in, but I will say that the simple answer for this is the more of the trace mineral nutrition that you can get through food and with food, the more available that's going to be to your body. So if you can take supplements, great. Those supplements can be helpful if they're from the right source and they're in the right form. But the better thing to do is to try and seek foods that are healthier for you. Again, this is complex. It's hard to really dial into things, but I'll let you kind of draw this out.
Sure, I agree, but I'm curious because when we talked before, you were talking about supplements, and I found that incredibly interesting. I think maybe the last half hour, if we could dedicate to the supplements and how those work and what might be a good base regimen for most people and what things to look for when they're buying supplements. Here's the thing is, and I touched with this when we were talking on the phone, is that I had a friend that was vitamin D deficient, and he couldn't believe it because he had bought these over-the-counter vitamin D gel caps, and he was taking like 3 or 4 of them a day, and they 2,000 units each. So he's like getting 6 to 8,000 units per dose. But for some reason, it wasn't absorbing into his body. So it was like there seems to be quite a difference between the types of quality you're actually getting with each one, even though you believe you're buying what you need, you may not be. I'd like to touch base with that if we could, because I'm currently trying vitamin regimens, and it seems to really be helping me. And I would never have guessed that prior to this, but I just got started on these vitamins, and I got to say that it's really had a powerful impact on me, on my energy level, on my focus, on my drive. And so if we could address that in the next last segment, that would be awesome.
For sure. I'd love to address that, and that's an excellent starting point for people. Like,
yes.
Even if you can't get the best food right now, to at least be supplementing. And I'll just make the point, I don't know if you notice this or not, but it's not something that happens right away. It's not an overnight thing.
Right.
It's a long-term, steady application, and you'll start to see the results. And then as those results start to come in, you'll see them start to amplify, and that's where you'll start to notice that you have better focus and better energy, and you get better rest and that kind of thing. It looks like Don has something he wants to say.
Yeah, thanks, Bud. I heard a while ago that there's an issue with the supplements that we buy OTC is that it's too big for our body to completely break down and make use of. Mm-hmm. That's why we end up basically peeing most of it out. I was under the impression that it depends on the molecular size, and food has that in the correct size that is most beneficial to our body, as opposed to these over-the-counter vitamins and supplements that we get. It seems like the plant-based stuff, instead of like the processed ascorbic acids and things like that, are the best way to go. And of course, vitamin D in and of itself is great, but you actually need D3, which is what your body makes from sunlight. The problem is that when you're D deficient, you need to be taking like 50 or 60,000 units of D3 a day.
Wow.
8,000 units ain't going to cut it. I have a friend who has a pain condition that is partially because of vitamin D deficiency, taking 60,000 units a day of D3.
Wow.
Yes, yes, yes. And let's remember that vitamin D is not just a vitamin, it's also a hormone called calciferol, and it affects calcium, which affects magnesium. So all these other pieces tie into that very directly.
Wow.
And I don't know how close we are to the break here, so I don't want to get too far down a train track.
Just about
yeah,
40 seconds.
Also needs to... Okay.
Yeah, about 40 seconds. So.
Okay. Yeah. So also vitamin K and K2 are a big part of how D is mobilized in the body as well. So you have to make sure that those other pieces are there, at least in some part, to support at least some part of that process. You could take all the vitamin D in the world, and if you don't have enough K2 to support it, it's not going to do you any good anyway.
See, that's the stuff that people need. That's the stuff we need to know, because it's great to go to the vitamin aisle and just grab a few bottles and start plowing them down. But if you don't know those things, I mean, you just might as well dump the pills in the toilet and cut out the middleman, because you just got nothing cooking there. So we'll definitely get into more of that after the break, ladies and gentlemen. One more break and one more half hour to go of the Paranormal Portal. So we'll be right back after these messages. It's time to pay the bills. We'll be right back. right, ladies and gentlemen, last half hour, we're in the home stretch at tonight's show. I hope you all have been enjoying this. I know I have. I've been absolutely fascinated with tonight's discussion. Obviously, there's so much to cover. There's so much that tonight's show is just kind of setting the stage to this. This will be an ongoing series that we're going to cover here on the Paranormal Portal. Don said that somebody had requested a podcast be done of this as well, and we can certainly do that. We can certainly do podcast versions of tonight's show and others. But we obviously want to give you guys the best information possible, because I think this is paramount to better living. If you have a healthy body, you're going to have the energy you need. You're going to have the drive. You're going to have the motivation. You're going to have the clarity. You're going to have, nobody can function well in pain or in a bad nutritional place. It's going to affect everything you do. And certainly I think that everybody wants to be more healthy and vibrant and a part of their world. And honestly, even offsetting the problems with aging, which for me is an issue, as I just had another birthday. So I got another tick on the clock, and I'm starting to, it's funny because through a lifetime of just poor health and bad choices and lethargy, I've now realized in the later years the value of that nutrition. And it's dawning on me that it's so important to aging well. Aging well. Who would have thought it? But I really appreciate you coming on tonight, Carlton. This has been a fantastic journey, and we've got so much more to go and to cover. But, I think we should probably touch on supplements now, because this is everybody's answer, is to go to the store, grab some, handfuls of supplements or multivitamins and call it a day. What do we need to know here?
All right, yeah, very good. And I want to say you guys are excellent hosts. You've really helped lead this discussion out, so thank you for that.
Oh, sure.
Let's jump into supplements. Number one on my list, vitamin C. Vitamin C, vitamin C, vitamin C, vitamin C. So this goes back to flushing, and it also supports cellular biology. And vitamin C, although it is an acid in the supplement form, in your body, it turns into an alkalizing thing. And so if you look into, we're not going to go deep into this tonight either, but if you look into the pH of blood, that directly affects the health of the blood, which directly affects the health of all cells in the body. And so vitamin C is an excellent alkalizer, and it's also excellent at pulling out toxins and chemicals.
Okay.
And I highly recommend people go and check out, it's a lecture from Dr. Suzanne Humphreys. It was done in Stockholm, Sweden, and it's available on YouTube also. And she talks about all the benefits of vitamin C, including liposomal vitamin C for actually curing cancer.
Oh, wow.
Now, what's this thing about the vitamin C that they're talking about? The ascorbic acid is made from a black mold. And is that beneficial?
That's interesting. I hadn't heard about the black mold. So see, this is how complex this whole puzzle is. As much study as I've done, I'm not even aware of that. But what I will say is, she talks about different types of vitamin C. Ascorbic acid is the primary one. It's better if it's with biotin, which makes it more bioavailable. And then the other option is there's liposomal vitamin C, although that's significantly more expensive. And that's basically a very small, this is back to your discussion about molecular size, and it's a very small molecular size. Basically what they do is they take vitamin C and they put it in an ultrasonic bath, and that disrupts it down to such a small size that it can be absorbed directly into your cells much easier. And that's actually what they're using to cure cancer patients. I forget exactly which cancers they were curing with it, but they were actually had incredible results.
Wow.
And just to simplify down what she talks about, at the end of the day, you can take up to 10 grams, that's 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day without any concern about toxicity. I think the LD50 is like 150 grams or 200 grams of vitamin C. It's a crazy amount.
Wow.
That said, when you first start taking vitamin C, you should, like any vitamin, like any supplement, like any food, slowly introduce it don't go take 10 grams of it right now because you're going to spend the next 3 days on the toilet pooping yourself. And that's, maybe it's fun for you, but it's not for me. And if you can't get toilet paper right now, then you're really in trouble.
Shall we say up the crick?
Up the creek with no paddle.
Wow. Jeez. Okay, so vitamin C is a good first step, and then where do you go?
All right. From there, I would look into manganese and zinc, since we already know that glyphosate is locking those up in the food system and in our bodies. Zinc and manganese, look for a good supplement. I'll have to go back and look into that. I try to get most of mine through food. But you have to remember I'm using regenerative agricultural practices here.
Sure.
And I'm using foliar feeds that actually specifically target those trace minerals, among others, to be high. So then after that, we're looking at vitamin D. And this can get really complicated, but let's just keep it simple for people. Vitamin D is best absorbed in a liquid form and in your food. Things like fish, nuts, meats are high in vitamin D, especially like wild-caught salmon, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And the best form of vitamin D, believe it or not, is from sunlight. And that doesn't mean go out and burn yourself on the beach till you're red. That means good, controlled access to sunlight. If you're a really white person and you burn really easily, only get a little bit of exposure every day, and you can build it up. And over time, you'll find that you can get more exposure, and that'll let you get more vitamin D. And it's much more bioavailable in the body that way. And our body actually manufactures it, I think, from vitamin D2, actually. And and once you've been exposed to it, it'll stay in your system for about 28 days. So if you're in the northern hemisphere like I am, and I think you guys kind of are too,
Yeah.
we get very deficient in the wintertime because we don't have access to good sunlight. And that's the time to take a supplement of vitamin D. And while, yes, you can take the vitamin D3 powders, they're not the best form. What you really want is a liquid form. And there's a company called Surthrival that sells one, and there's another one called Onnit, which I think is actually run by Joe Rogan. Most people are familiar with the Joe Rogan podcast.
Sure.
And I tried the Onnit stuff because my friend bought me some for my birthday a couple of years ago. And wow. I didn't realize how deficient I was until the energy kicked in from it. Like, my sleep hours went down. My energy and production levels just went through the roof.
Wow.
And so that's on vitamin D.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, is there any effect from things like, and I'm just throwing this out here. I don't know. I have no basis for this question other than just idle curiosity, but do things like sunblock and stuff get in the way of that vitamin D production?
Yes.
That is such an excellent question. And there's a whole podcast dedicated to this from Daniel Vitalis with a woman named Nadine Artemis.
Okay.
So I would say go check those out as well because they really get into the details of this.
But does it? It does then? Yes?
I'm sorry?
It does then affect the production of vitamin D?
Yes.
Okay. Very cool.
You
That's
know,
just
I
occurred to
also
me.
heard something also that you really shouldn't wear sunglasses either because your eyes, when you're connecting with the sun, your eyes have to know to tell your body that it's sunny outside and start producing vitamin D. Is that right?
Yes. So that goes into light energy that I mentioned in that list before.
Uh-huh.
That goes into light energy and energetics. Boy, this is such a wide topic, but yes, that has a huge effect. And also, the computer screen that you're looking at every night, that is emitting a tremendous amount of blue light, and that's not what we've experienced naturally. And believe it or not, our circadian rhythms are programmed by the sunlight that we're exposed to, and so that's a very important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a doctor, I can't remember his name, but he has a whole series of videos on YouTube specifically about biohacking your body using light and not using bad lights and how to use good lights and what the right exposure to sunlight is. And again, this is another whole complex topic, but these pieces all fall together to build a healthy human living system.
Perfect. So hold that thought. We have a phone call. Are you okay with taking a phone call?
No.
For sure.
Is it? Well, let's find out. It looks like it is. Hello, area code 605. You're on the air.
Hey guys, Taco.
Hey, Taco. How you doing, brother?
Taco Tuesday.
Good. Hopefully I'm not being an issue here or a problem. I know I had to wait a while to make a call, so.
Oh, that's okay. What do you got, brother?
A few questions. I've been actually really curious about all this for seeds here. And first of all, hey Don, hey Brett, how you guys doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Here's the question. A couple questions I had for seed. Honestly, I do a multivitamin supplement. Now, a long time ago, a friend of mine said that if I grind it up to a powder, it actually absorbs better. Would that be something that I should be doing, or?
I would say look for a multivitamin that's in a capsule that's already in a powder, and preferably in the smallest form and of the highest quality. And I know that's kind of subjective to say, but yeah, I mean, yeah, you could grind it, that would help. But I would say, when you run out of those, look for something of higher quality. And also, while we're on this topic, gut health is such a big part of this. They're studying the microbiome right now. There is some tremendous science coming out on the microbiome and how important that really is in human health. And if you don't have good gut biology, then you're not going to be able to absorb those vitamins. One supplement that I would highly recommend, and I know Taco has more questions here, but one supplement I would highly recommend is it's from a Garden of Life. It's a probiotic, and that makes a tremendous difference in getting your gut biology straight, which makes all those nutrients available again. The other thing I would say with vitamins, anytime you take a vitamin, take it either before or after you eat some food. So there's some food for that to dilute into, and as your body takes that food in, you're also taking in that vitamin profile spectrum.
Gotcha. Okay. What else you got,
Okay,
Taco?
so that's actually fairly important to do. This is kind of on the paranormal side of things. Do you think that there's any kind of vitamin or nutrient out there that can actually make you, like, if you accidentally overdose on it or take too much of it, that can actually make you hallucinate things?
I don't know about hallucination because I haven't delved deep into that, but I can say even vitamin D and vitamin E, if you take too much, you go up into another range where you might get cancer from it. Dr. Rhonda Patrick goes into that, especially on vitamin D and vitamin E. There's a target range you want to hit. You don't want to exceed it.
Wow, that's good to know.
Hey, fellas, I hate to break in real quick, but Brent,
Awesome.
I got going.
Okay. Yeah, Don, I figured you'd be heading out, but thank you, brother. It's good to see you.
Taco,
No worries, Tom.
talk to you later. Hey, Carlton, thanks for calling in. We got to get together and do something else. I threw a couple ideas, but I got to go. We'll see you guys later.
Okay.
Sounds great, Don.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Don. See you later.
Thanks.
Bye, bud.
Take care, Don.
And Carlton just got bigger.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Now you can see my face. That's scary.
Yeah. See all
there
of
was.
you. So go ahead, Taco. What do you
Those
got?
are the main questions I had, and I just.
Good.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, brother. You're fine.
Those are the main questions I had. And what is the importance of zinc right now with the current state of things?
Oh,
yeah.
I say that with air quotes.
Good quote.
What is the importance of zinc?
Good question.
Okay, so zinc, manganese, and selenium, very important for immunity. So zinc and manganese specifically are highly concentrated in the eyes, the brain, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the reproductive organs. And so if you're shy on those, all of those organs can't function well. So that's a big part of it. And then if you go deeper into the NCBI database, you'll find that there's all kinds of studies regarding manganese and zinc and immunity. But bottom line, manganese, zinc, and selenium are huge for immunity. Keep them up. Keep them up to date. And keep in mind that somewhere in your food or water supply, you're probably losing some of those nutrients you're even taking on through exposure to glyphosate and other chemical toxins.
Yeah. Wow. Good question, Taco. I appreciate that.
Cool.
That was good.
Awesome.
Yeah, because we hear a lot about zinc
Well,
now
thank you.
lately. Yeah.
And if you don't mind it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. I was.
No. I just had one more question, and this is kind of a personal question. And I consider the Portal and everyone in the chat room to kind of be family, so I don't really care about saying this.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a lot of heart problems.
Oh.
And I need to know, I have a lot of like random palpitations and stuff like that. What could I be deficient in, or what could I take that would help with that issue?
Okay. I would look into coenzyme CoQ10. Is an enzyme that supports heart health. I would look into niacin. And there's another one. I lost my grip on the thought, though. Magnesium is the other big one, and we should go into magnesium briefly anyway.
Sure. And what about what about that fish oil, by the way? The omega-3s or whatever?
Oh, yes. The omega-3s are huge for that, and that goes to a balance. There's so many processed foods and grains that have their balance off on omega-3, 6, and 9, and we tend to lean heavily into the omega-6, which is what seeds and plants use to store long-term oils, and so they don't break down and become available as easily, and they do oxidize very easily. And what you don't want is oxidized oils or fats in your system, because they're not good for your system, really, to simplify it.
Okay, gotcha. Very good.
So
that's great. Great.
Okay, awesome. So those are the things I should concentrate on then.
Yeah. And then magnesium, I would say, don't take a supplement. You could take a supplement, but remember that magnesium in the gut is not absorbed very well, even when your gut biology is good. So, like, if you're taking, 100 milligrams of magnesium, if you're getting 10 milligrams out of that, you're doing really good. The best way to take that is through something called magnesium oil. And it's not actually an oil, it's actually an aqueous solution. It's basically, you get magnesium flakes, which you can order online through Amazon in bulk, pretty cheap, and you mix 50-50 magnesium flakes in boiling water. You let it cool, you put it in a horse sprayer, and when you come out of the shower or bath, when your pores are open, you spray it on your skin and rub it in. And I should warn you, when you first do that, you're going to get kind of an itching, burning sensation, especially if you're deficient in magnesium. But as you build it up over time, that makes a tremendous difference, and that will help tremendously flush out toxins, and that also supports cellular energy production. And magnesium does a whole bunch of other functions in the body, including help mobilize calcium to the right places.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome. Man, this has been one of the best calls I've made in about 20 years, so I just want to thank you very much, and I want to thank Brent very much for letting you come on and letting me talk, and that's been wonderful, and I'm going to try to practice these a little more often. So
very good, brother. Well, thanks for calling. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Taco.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate it, man. Got to give a shout out to Cha Cha, because she always yells at me for not giving her a shout out. If she doesn't hear this, well, then I guess whatever.
All right, sounds good, brother.
But I'm going to let you guys go. I really appreciate the show. Thank you very much. And everyone stay healthy out there. So.
All right, brother. Thanks for calling in and being a part of the show. We'll talk to you soon. Very good. That was Mr. Taco from the chat room. Great questions, though. I think that right now we're hearing a lot about zinc, especially in the current situation. Everybody's kind of really cued in on this, developing immunity or resistance. And I think that it's a great time for nutrition, So this is definitely timely and appropriate, I would say, to everything that's going on.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's great from a more global perspective too, because it's making people think about, they're sitting home, they got nothing else to do, and they're starting to think about their food supply. Could they get food? Yeah. Maybe we should grow some of our own. Maybe we need to understand how to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of like we're trying to go with regenerative agriculture to get smaller farms operational again and get those communities interacting with them so that better nutrition is provided, and that builds our infrastructure also as much more resilient. You think about a network that has thousands of nodes. A couple of nodes go down, it's no big deal. Right. If you have 3 nodes and 2 go down, you don't have a network anymore.
Right. Yeah, good point. And I like the resurgence of things like urban gardening and vertical gardening and things like that people are taking up to, garden and have incredibly comprehensive gardens in very tight spaces. It is possible, ladies and gentlemen, to grow a garden wherever you are. If you're tight on space, look into vertical gardening. It's the idea of using containers to garden vertically. Have rows of plants going up instead of across a plane. You go up vertically, and you can squeeze a lot more in, and these plants can perform just fine. They don't need to be bedded into a big plot, and it makes weeding a breeze as well. So the maintenance and upkeep on them is really cool, really brilliant. So there's lots of opportunities, I think, for people to have better health. It's just that a lot of these ideas aren't widely known, and people, I think, are intimidated by growing your own and taking care of your own nutrition. We've become conditioned to, pharmacology. And not the pharmacology, the PHAR, And
Yes.
when we're not well, we just go to the doctor. He writes on a piece of paper, and we get a tablet that we take 3 times a day for 10 days, and magically we're supposed to get better. But I think that's in the long run. These kind of approaches, of course, the side effects that go with our tradition or our modern health care is, they're absolutely scary. And I think a lot of it could be avoided by just better health and better upkeep of ourselves, and looking into our past for health that we've kind of forgotten in our rambunctious, incredibly fast-paced today. We've got about 4 minutes left, brother. So anything you want to cover in those last 4 minutes?
Boy, there's so much on my mind. I'm trying to
That's how fast 2
bring
hours
it down
go.
to something small.
2 hours
yeah,
sounds 2 hours sounds like a huge amount of time, but it's really not. It's so quick that we can only dust the surface of this. But as I stated before, I'd like you to come back, and we can make this, an ongoing series of informative episodes. I hope people appreciate this, and I hope people are getting something valuable out of this, because I know I am, and I love all of you guys out there listening, and it would make me really happy to know that this was helping you live a better life as well. So, but yeah, now we're down to 4 minutes because I just took up a big chunk of that one.
That's right. I completely agree with you, Brent. And, the more people we can affect, and the more knowledge they have, the more they can help their friends and family. And that's how we spread the message wider and help improve the health. And when we get people's health up and they're able to not be in pain, that's a big thing. Like, people that are in pain, they're not in any condition to handle any other kind of stress, and that's when they get angry and they do stupid things and they hurt other people around them.
Yeah.
And so that really is kind of the core of good spirituality is health and happiness. And once you have that, you want to share that health and happiness with other people instead of spreading your anger and hate.
That's a great point, and I hadn't considered that very much, but you're right. People in pain are going to react and function from a place of pain. And of course, that's a defensive place. That's a protective place. And it's hard to radiate love and good things into the world when you're coming from a protective place and you're not feeling well. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to try to make our lives better, and we can certainly make good strides, I think. And not that this is a cure-all or a curative thing in and of itself, but I think this, in conjunction with several other things, can be fundamental in building, a better tomorrow for all of us, and both interpersonally and individually. Because I'm just in what I shared with you before about me being on a vitamin regimen now, I feel like I have more energy. I feel like I got more to give, and it's really, I think, helped. It's helped me do better shows because I have more energy to put into the shows. There were times, when I was just like barely, awake, and I'd have to try to gear up and find energy to put into a show. And now I feel like I got energy all, coming out all out of me. So it's definitely been a big thing for me. And I find so much value in this, and I hope that everyone else will as well.
I couldn't agree more. And I just want to make one other point. A good source of probiotics and food and gut biology are fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, water kefir. If you're not familiar with that, look that up. There's milk kefir too if you want more of a dairy thing. And there's all sorts of other probiotic foods that you can be eating, but those are tremendous.
Fantastic. Very good. Why don't you take the last minute and let people know how to stay in touch with you, brother, as you're doing your thing.
All right. Well, you can check out my YouTube channel here on YouTube. It's the Farmacy Seeds Network. Pharmacy spelled Farmacy, as in let food be thy medicine. I'm also on Twitter, and what's the other one? Instagram. Although I don't update those very rarely now because they're not tied to my YouTube account. So YouTube is my primary thing, and I may go forward in other social media. I'm also on MeWe as the Farmacy Seeds Network, but we're missing the K until I can adjust the name.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, brother. Thank you so much for making the time to be here with us tonight. Thank you for all the information you've shared. I just love it. It's just been great. And I hope you'll agree to come back and we can do more and dive deeper into this more granularly. But this has been a great 30,000-foot view of nutrition. And thank you so much, brother.
Thank you very much, Brent. I really appreciate your great hosting, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And I hope this finds everyone well, and I'm more than happy to come back again.
All right, guys,
thank you.
We love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. We'll be back tomorrow with some night terrors. So everybody have a great night and sleep well.